It's not there. Recording. What is up, freaks? Welcome back to Tales from the Crypt. Happy Monday. Very excited for this conversation. Crypto Graffiti, how are you doing?
How's it going, Marty? How you doing?
Doing well. Happy you DM'd me yesterday. So I guess the context for this interview is I sent out a thread yesterday morning basically saying like, hey, like what is the monetization path of content creators and artists of the future? Is it streaming sats, value for value? Many people helping an artist or content creator monetize with small micro payments or even larger chunks of payments, giving however much they wish? Or is it like an NFT model where you have art collectors in the digital world paying big money to grab a digital like art piece or content piece that is cryptographically signed by the artist slash content creator? I'm happy you reached out and said, hey, I've got some nuanced views on this. Let's jump into it. So that's why we're here today. I guess for anybody who may be listening before we jump into the meat of the conversation, if you can basically introduce yourself and explain what you've been doing in the space for some time now, because you've created some incredible pieces, one of which is posted behind me if anybody is watching this live or on YouTube.
Thanks, man. Yeah, thanks again for having me, Marty. Long time Bitcoin artist, and so I got into the space thinking that there'd just be a need for different types of content that appealed to different types of people because it was very programmer centric and libertarian centric, and not a lot of design and art. And so art helps spread movements. A lot of people are just visually minded, and so I heard about it early enough, and it was complex enough to know that we would need some ways of simplifying it for certain people, myself included, to really get our head around it. And art has a way of doing that, distilling things down so more people can grasp it. So my work, I tend to repurpose banking materials, but I also like to try and involve the protocol and the tech in projects too. So really, really excited about stuff that's happening with layer 2. A big rabbit hole moment for me involved micropayments and learning about Hashcash, and that for me was like I'm not big in the finance space. I don't know much about econ, but this creative take on how payments could potentially thwart DDoS attacks, and open up this new era that could possibly get us away from this ad-based era that we're living in, which really is detrimental in a number of different ways. That for me really resonated, and I thought, okay, I'm creative, maybe I can do some stuff pertaining to that. And so I dove in, and several years later, here we are, and loving every minute of it.
Now I was streaming sats to you. We're not streaming. I was just tipping you while you're doing a live set. What was that? 3 Fridays ago, 4 Fridays ago at this point? Gosh, maybe even longer than that.
Yeah, April 9th. So yeah, it's been so. Yeah, man. So kind of a more pointed take on what's going on with Sphinx, more specific to this particular thing that I'm interested in, which is DJing, but also goes back to what we're talking about with getting away from these ads, and for electronic music, which is everywhere nowadays, especially during the pandemic. We saw all sorts of live streams and the issues that come with being encroached upon by platforms that rely on ads and antiquated copyright models. So this was a look at doing a different take on that cut out middle people, and similar to Sphinx meant like direct payments and splitting the payments so that the producers can get a cut, and rather than have to do things like throw ads in the middle of a music set, which is like just not ideal whatsoever. This would provide an alternative, and it'd be a big undertaking to be ground up and really kind of hit at everything that's been built already for the whole royalties space, which is a mess. But I think it's the future. I don't think people want a the Twitches and the Facebooks and the YouTubes to just like shut down and not have your art heard, or B, the DJs have to do where like they'll pitch down the track considerably, so like the vocals are nothing like what the producer wanted or envisioned, in order to get around these bots that'll like arbitrarily shut down the streams. It's just a total clusterfuck. We're like just used to this ad based system that robs us of our time, and there's all these hurdles that we're now just accustomed to, but it shouldn't. Like, we're going to look back 20 years from now and think like, what the hell were we doing? So excited to see things like Sphinx and what you're doing on the podcast side of it. And yeah, on the music side, really anything that involves digital content creation, we're starting to see a bunch of experimentation, NFTs being part of that, streaming sats. I think they all kind of go hand in hand. And so when you posted about this idea of, I think, was there like an obfuscated angle to your tweet too? Was it like, oh, like people would like reveal the artwork with the donations? Was that?
Yeah, there's also like the paywall model where you put a paywall in front of your content before it's consumed, whether it be music, written content, maybe even art as well. Like, hey, you have to pay X amount of sats to view or consume this art. It's another model you can throw in there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they all kind of speak to the same thing, which is like the current models are broken, right? So people are thinking of ways to try and hide what you made and piece it out and get paid for piecing it out, or to get paid on the fly, like more like the Sphinx side, or just get paid to say that you own it, like the NFT side. There's a lot of stuff that's happening, and I think they're all kind of like close cousins to one another. And I think people, like rightly so, with a lot of the hubbub that's happening with the NFTs and the crazy valuations. Like there's a ton of validity in saying that there's scams going on, and it shouldn't be receiving some of the attention that it does. But there's also some cool stuff too. And so I'm sort of at a crossroads, because I'm a Bitcoiner, and I know there's a ton of pushback. But there is some cool stuff happening with like programmable art, where people can say that they own like one of the layers, and there's like several different layers to this artwork that then changes with smart contracts. So maybe there's a different color palette that happens around dusk, so that it better matches like your view out your window, like certain shit that's unfolding, where it's early days. And some of the big valuations are purported to be because you're owning, let's say, the first of blank. And so there might be some validity there, because if this does end up sticking around in some form, and to have the early editions, quote unquote, of it, might make sense in some respect. But yeah, it's there is some cool stuff in there, along with a lot of the fluff. So I think there's going to be a big shakeout. But hopefully, what does come out of it are artists being able to sustain themselves, because up until this point, it's been very difficult, from the musicians with Spotify's, or, just like them collecting royalties for like public performance stuff. Like there's these nonprofits like ASCAPs and BMIs, and like if your music is played in like a restaurant or a venue, like the process that you're supposed to go through to receive your royalties is so cumbersome, and likely like purposefully so. Like some of these sites are like visiting the DMV, where they'll charge like a monthly fee to these restaurants in order to be able to play the music. And then it's just it's messed up. It's outdated. And so I think what we're seeing now is with some of these new approaches, all sorts of good stuff, but people try to take advantage of it too. So interesting days for sure.
Yeah. And so let's try to break this down for the freaks to separate and try to help everybody who's listening or watching to visualize this. Let's start with like because there's different types of art / content. Like this is a podcast, right? Audio content. People come to learn or get entertained. You have the newsletter that I write, written content. You have what you did last month on April 9th or 7th. Sorry. You basically did a live set on YouTube, and you had a tip QR code where anybody watching, I was watching on my TV and I was able to just scan your QR code on my TV and send you sats over the Lightning Network. And then you have digital art being created that has a cryptographic signature from the artist, and that can be sold as an NFT to individuals that they can hold and basically say, hey, I own this one of one or N of X um, piece of art created by this particular artist. So there's different ways and of monetizing for these creators and artists. And like, so before we even get into like the different ways of monetizing, do you think we should separate the different types of creators from content creator to artist? And does the separation of those creators have does that mean they can monetize differently in your mind?
Yeah, I think eventually it's interesting because it's all kind of converging into one where like I think we're all content creators now because your tweets are going to perform better if you put an image there and there's we're creating content whether we like it or not if you're on social media and then I think it's only a matter of time before payments are going to be everywhere. Like Jack's alluded to it happening with Twitter. I think it'll be the same game theory when one of the big platforms does it with the other ones, because why wouldn't you want to earn some random sats if it's done elegantly? Because that's like the big thing. Like if it's obtrusive. I don't know if you remember back when Reddit took over Dig, they had like Dig version 4, I think it was, where it was just a mess, right? And so because it was a mess, like everyone was like, oh, look at this really sleek thing called Reddit, which is it's ugly, but it just focuses on the content. So I think that's kind of how it'll unfold. Like someone's going to do it, people will get paid, it'll be talked about too much, and everyone will be annoyed because everyone's talking about the payments. But then eventually it'll be this elegant solution where if someone digs out this fact that you were looking for and you send them 1,000 sats and it's done seamlessly, then well, for that guy that created the meme that you laughed at and you sent the sats there, someone else is just going to want to be like, hey, I now own it, look at my collection of memes, and boom, there's your NFT. It's kind of a close cousin of it, right? And it's also like Jesse Powell tweeted something recently where he just sees it like an even closer cousin of philanthropy, because he's supporting the arts. He owns a gallery. He supported my work, and it's just another way of supporting. And it's kind of like when if there's like a Kickstarter or something, and you check that box or don't check the box that shows publicly like, did you support this thing? On one hand, it's a little feeding the ego if you do, but on the other hand, it's also there's the network effect of showing your friends and family that you supported this, and maybe they're also going to support it, right? So if people want to like have this collector's mindset, or just innately do, and then they have this clean page where it's like, hey, show these things where I supported these different artists and you should too. And it's really tough for digital artists nowadays, which I don't think gets talked about enough. Then yeah, I think there's going to be the tipping everywhere, and then there's going to be like a very clean version of like, okay, you can now own the thing that you help support too. And if it's done in a clean fashion, I think, and once a lot of this other stuff dies out with the crazy valuations, because there can only be so many firsts, which I think is driving some of it. But I don't think it will die out, because there's also the whole money laundering aspect of it too. But yeah, I think it's here to stay, and I think there's some good that could be done with it.
Yeah, so where I get hung up, I've been very vocal about this, like NFTs particularly for me as a form of digital, like I don't get digital art at all. And again, value is subjective. Obviously, there's a market for all this stuff. People are throwing a ton of money at it, whether or not it's because people want to be first and the novelty of being first and the potential value creation of having the things that dropped first. Is an investment decision for these people. But when you compare digital and physical art, the hurdle that I haven't been able to get over is like physical art, like a painting done by an artist. Proof of work is there. Like you can see the paint strokes, you can see everything. There's like a depth to it, a physical nature to it, where the original is obvious that it's original, and a print is obvious that it's a print. Where in the digital realm, and the only thing separating the original from its copies is that signature, and is that signature equivalent to the physical uniqueness of a physical art piece? And I don't even know if this framing makes sense or this is a problem that others are having, but how would you describe the digital art being similar to physical art?
Yeah, it's the whole like should this token represent the art thing is a hang up for a lot of people, and I can totally see it. But it's one of these things where like if the artist wants to say that, yeah, if by calling this token the art, it then enables me to support myself as an artist because you're appreciating the art that's quote unquote tied to the token. Sure, there's crazier stuff that's done in the art world. For a lot of people, it makes enough sense to want to support and dive in. But I get it. It's like a little bit removed, and part of that is because of the bloat that would come with actually trying to have the full artwork in the blockchain itself, which would muck up the works, right? So there needs to be some sort of workaround, and this is kind of it. And if it's from a purely like investment perspective, then it gives more credence to like this is crazy talk because anyone for $69 million can just have the JPEG. But if it's more altruistic, and there's someone that is doing something special with the work that wouldn't otherwise necessarily be done, and it's either driving emotion or people to do something that they wouldn't otherwise do, and there's some reaction from it, good or bad, and that means you want to pony up some money. Yeah, maybe it makes more sense. Like for me, it sort of hits home, like with, for instance, this split payment thing that I did, because there's projects that I'll do where like I don't like make money from. So even though I'm not a digital artist, I do physical work, but there's from time to time I'll do projects where like I won't make any money from it, but I think it's either cool or important to try and show as like a use case, and then I'll be in the hole like a decent amount of money. And so if there's a way of having something represent it, that it sort of becomes a construct for patronage that might not otherwise already be there. And so if it means having something collectible, there's a marketplace for it, then it's easier than just like asking for a handout, which is something that I don't like doing. So it's like it's a built-in way of getting some sort of a return for what some people might see as doing good.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm still like digital art. How would you describe digital art? Like, is a meme a digital art piece? Is like it does it like so, and compared to physical art, like a big painting, like the Sistine Chapel or something like that, or Monet. It takes like very like the thing, this dollar United Nodes of Bitcoin piece that you did. That was very painstaking work, cutting up all this and putting it into this physical art piece. Like
Right.
proof of work in the physical art world versus the digital art world. Like
Yeah.
the people, like the $16 million, like is that like I don't know. Now we're getting. I mean, I'm really getting into like a philosophical art conversation here, but like, is art in the digital world the same as the physical world? Or does it have the same value or aesthetic nature or subjective beauty? I guess is what we're trying to get to. Subjective beauty.
Yeah.
Objective beauty, excuse me, not even subjective. Objective beauty.
Really one of these things where it's the whole beauty is in the eye of the beholder, because different people, um, and there's a lot of I know safety is speaks to this too. And like for me, like my personal style, like if you looked in this room right now, I'm like very attuned to aesthetics and design and interior design, but I wouldn't go for like the ornate style, which is more proof of work. I like more like mid-century, where it is proof of work in that it shows like the steel beams and like you can literally see how the thing was constructed, but it's not necessarily the same, right? So these are two very different aesthetics, different time periods. that speak to the same thing, but they're just different. With digital art, it's like if you're a digital artist, you might be more attuned to the different types of like filters that are being used. And this I think, like, the knowing that you don't know like how it's done, I think can be an issue for some people who aren't doing digital art, myself included, because it's like, oh, well, are they taking some shortcuts in certain ways? And sometimes you'll see on Twitter where there might be talk of like, oh, he just did this tweak to it, and that's how this effect happened. But I don't like, I like performance art. I don't think I look at like what Bitcoin sign guy did as like a form of art, and that is just very different. But also for me is, I love it. I love all different types of stuff. Some of the activism work that Ai Weiwei does to push back with the Chinese government, and where it's a different form, that maybe it's less time on a canvas, and maybe some of it's quicker than other pieces, but there's a message, there's like a strong message, and it's not a strong layering effect with a bunch of different colors coming together, but the art can be just in the message itself. I love how, like, I don't like spending a ton of time just being like, what is art? Like, I'd rather like try and like make it because I got a bunch of ideas and stuff. But I love how it questions everything. Like, I've had a couple scenarios where like I just did this thing down at well, it's been a while now, but down at the Mexican border, and like I have some of the wall, and I was trying to bring it back over for this project, and I got stopped 3 times, and then each time the border patrol, they look back there and they're like, this is de la frontera, and then and I'm like, yeah. And then once I was just like, it's for art, they just like let me go, right? So like, it's just sort of this extra thing. Same thing when I did the Silk Road, where it was made out of drugs. Mm-hmm. Like, when I was researching that, I was like, am I gonna like catch heat for this if I in doing the research for it, there was like other artwork that was made out of cocaine, and they just like let it slide, like, because it's art. And so it just sort of like falls into this other category where there's less rules, it pushes boundaries, and people can assess it however they want and internalize it however they want. And so digital art for me, it's like, I think long term, betting against us staring at these rectangles all day isn't a good move. I have my significant other does UX related stuff and has worked with some big technology companies where they're like already making these walls of screens, right, for the home. And so some people won't be into it, some will, but having the dematerialization that we talk about so much happen right in front of us, and then trying to think that it's probably not going to head in that direction with art too, is, I don't know, it's
Luddite thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to, you said it, I don't think it's a Luddite. I just think it's happening whether we like it or not,
No, yeah. And I'm one of these people who's been apprehensive, skeptical, but it makes a lot of sense. Like this behind me again, like, that's what I love about your art. You mentioned the Silk Road piece, the what's his real name? Not Satoshi Nakamoto, but Dorian Nakamoto piece, the Hal Finney with cut up credit cards, the Billboard campaign that you worked on. You added a VR aspect to it. That was beautiful. And those messages were very concise and powerful. For anybody who's not aware of that, can you explain what you did with the Billboard campaign around the country?
Yeah, so this was that was actually going to start off. I'd created the backside of the dollar that's behind you, and was just looking. I'd used that to teach people about kind of Bitcoin 101. It was in an exhibit, and people just gravitated toward it. I saw how people like money, and so I would use it to teach and talk about what nodes were, and decentralization, and so I wanted to do something similar with the backside, and just go bigger with it. And so the idea was to just have one kind of nearby the Mint in San Francisco. And then when I thought of all the different messages that can happen, and have it be this teachable moment, well, there's plenty of messages, so why not try to do more? And so then it turned into this bigger project where there was a billboard in each of the Federal Reserve bank cities. And so the idea was just to get people to head back to social media. So there was an at BTC versus Fed landing thread where they could learn about what's going on with inflation, and topics like the Cantillon effect and how our money is broken and Bitcoin can be a way out. And it was right around the time when institutional attention was really at a fever pitch. And so, I think we need to get the word out to all different walks of life. And so these were in working class neighborhoods, to try and, like we talked about at the start of the conversation, just sort of distill what's going on down to something that's more jargon free and easy to digest, so people can wrap their head around the importance of this thing.
Yeah, it was very powerful, and the VR aspect was cool too. So that's like a form of digital art. I was like, all right, this is like the physical and the digital world interacting with each other. Well, like how you could put your phone up and some of the billboards would animate, correct?
Yeah. So it's technically AR, augmented reality, that can be used
Yeah,
in VR.
excuse me.
Yeah, no worries. So it's part of another like big movement that's happening with this metaverse, which I have mixed feelings about that too, because we already spend so much time in front of the computer, and then to then have I saw you tweet about this at one point too. I was like, yeah, it's uh, I think the goal is eventually to not have to be in front of these things, and the whole VR world sort of goes against that. But people are into it, and especially in times like COVID where they're stuck at home, whether they like to be or not. It's a way of interacting with one another, and yeah, so people can go in and see these different galleries and claim ownership of real estate and view artwork and buy and sell artwork. And it's another big movement that's happening right now with other platforms, other chains.
Yeah, it's like what is it, Algorand, where you can go in and buy literal real estate. Like people are buying up land in Algorand, thinking that the VR world's gonna have that as their shelling point. That's what,
Right.
yeah,
In the, is Algorand another one?
it might be. Yeah, I'm not. I haven't. It's crazy. There's been iterate, like you said earlier, like we were discussing earlier, the fact that some people want to get NFTs. It's like they want to get in first. Like being around since like 2013, 2014. Like if I have rare Pepes from Counterparty, is that the actual first NFT that people are going to want to value more than the Crypto Kitties or the Crypto Punks that came after, many years after? Is that like a sneaky good investment right now, getting rare Pepes from Counterparty?
It actually is very hot right now. It is. So shout out DJ Skrilla, early Bitcoin artist. Him and Theo Goodman and others, Joe Looney, who I know you've been on the show, they've been helping push these Telegram auctions. And so it's like these things are going for a pretty penny now, man. So if you're sitting on some,
I have some on an open dime downstairs. Right?
yeah, so people are starting to discover it because there's being the whole first is obviously driving a lot of the value, and so people are taking that claim, whether it's truthful or not. Unfortunately, they call it greenwashing when like people just conveniently leave out the Pepes out of the whole like NFT. uh, so yeah, Pepe's, there's projects even before Pepe's too. But yeah, it started with Bitcoin, and then because of the true decentralized nature of Bitcoin and not having the deep pockets of like a consensus that would fund a lot of these marketplaces, it was guys that were developing on the side of their day jobs and didn't get as much traction probably because of it. There's other reasons too, like I personally was like worked on my own stuff because it was more like there wasn't like the theme of having it be like frog related, but now there's a lot of attention that is being paid to it because it's surfacing. There's I think it's Sotheby's or Christie's is about to auction a what what is dubbed to be, I believe, the first NFT on Counterparty from 2014. I want to say it's called a monograph. There's probably people yelling at the screen right now, but someone who just kind of got some more shine recently because of all the activity that's happening in the auction space for early CryptoPunks and stuff. So finally getting some due for really being the pioneers and exploring this stuff early on. It's good to see.
Yeah. No, and if you freaks want to learn more about Counterparty, Rare Pepes, and the first iteration of NFTs on Bitcoin, go seek out the episode with Joe Looney that I did. Yeah, gosh, we were still recording at Barstool when he came on. It had to be early 2018. It's a fascinating Bitcoin history lesson that many don't know about. And everybody's like, oh, NFTs are new craze. Like, Bitcoin's missing out because we can't do this. It's like, well, it already has done this. But as you mentioned, the limitations of the protocol level of Bitcoin sort of limited the growth of NFTs on Bitcoin. But another interesting rabbit hole we can dive down, like considering the nature of the second layers and potentially third layers in RGB that are being produced on top of Bitcoin, could we see a shift of NFT markets back to Bitcoin? Because again, I may not be able to see the value of NFTs, and I may not be spending money on it. Who knows? Maybe my mind will change in the future, but there's obviously a market for this. And as Bitcoiners, what is your opinion? Should we be trying to bring this market to Bitcoin, whether it be a second layer like Liquid, potentially a third layer like RGB down the line? What is the future of NFTs and Bitcoin? Will it be something that is just completely disregarded?
There is interest in it. There's a lot of negative feedback too. So especially with Counterparty and like doing it on Bitcoin, you know, those guys catch a lot of heat for it clogging up the network. And so, but there is interest, you know, like I get people asking me, when are you going to do NFTs? And there's stuff in the works, you know, Giacomo's doing and others are doing with RGB. Also, Blockstream is soon going to launch a liquid-based NFT platform. And so there's going to be options out there which will provide a lot of the same features that I think is really driving this for digital artists, which is namely, you know, the secondary sales. And then hopefully some community comes around it too, because that's a big component of this too. You know, if you look, not to rehash a lot of the digital art conversation, but you look at where they were prior to this, it's just doing contract work, stuff that they're not excited about. But now they're able to kind of let loose and do some, what I think is some really cool stuff. And so if they're able to do a lot of the same things on more Bitcoin centric platforms, then I think long term it could make sense, because as Bitcoin continues to eat away at various stores of value and the artists want to keep their earnings in Bitcoin regardless, it seems like it would make sense for them to want to gravitate toward Bitcoin, should they want to do the NFT stuff. You know, they're already experiencing a lot of the same scaling issues with Ethereum and having to resort to other solutions as a result of the high gas fees. And so, yeah, I mean, if it's out there and it's feasible with Bitcoin and there's a market for it, you know, why not? I think for me, the biggest thing is that I just hate to see is have Bitcoin artists that need to get by, and so they're going to where the money is, and so they go into a more Ethereum centric ecosystem because they just need to make ends meet, and so it might change the course of their work, which might be more Bitcoin focused prior to this. And so if there's different options for them that would mean having more creative culture closer to Bitcoin, I think it's good, because we need to have this and not have just everyone see a lot of the cool imagery happening elsewhere. Because regardless of where you kind of stand in terms of the whole, like, does Bitcoin need marketing thing, it's good to have a bunch of different types of people involved with the project. And if it's kind of like what happened with San Francisco, where all the artists had to leave and go elsewhere. I would just hate to have that happen, right? So we have artists now that are dedicated. I would like to see that pool grow, and if we can speak to them with different mediums that can let them explore more in whether it's physical or digital, I think it's good.
Yeah. Guerrilla marketing is okay. This is some great guerrilla marketing behind me. It's powerful and it's very organic, right? And it would be a great shame to see that. That's like, I guess, I don't know if it'll be called a blasphemous maximalist here, but no, yeah, you don't want to drive people away if you don't have to. And that's like, I guess the point of this discussion is to prove like, hey, if it can be done on something like a liquid at RGB, and it's not clogging the chain, but you can get into debate if the spam exists. Like if somebody wants to use the Bitcoin blockchain for something, are they not allowed to? Who's to decide that? But if you can even avoid that conversation wholly by moving it to second and third layers via liquid and RGB, like who cares? Like right? Like if you can build it and you can do it, and it doesn't bother anybody else. Like what's the big problem?
Yeah, I agree. It's I think trying to appeal to everyone isn't going to work, and so there will be strong opposition to it, and it's all good. Everyone everyone can run with what they want and mute what they want, and it's part of this. I just kind of cringe when I see people try and speak for all Bitcoiners, because to me that totally goes against like the ethos of what this is all about too. And so yeah, just let your freak flag fly, and if that means supporting art in ways where other Bitcoiners aren't into it, fuck it, just do you. And if it's not your thing, all good too, because I think by having all these varying takes on it is good. It just means that ecosystem is growing and we are getting all different types of people in it. So it's this is panning out how I would expect it to.
Yeah, and Bitcoin, the network, actually has no fucking idea how anybody's using it, whether it's for money, for art. So that's
Right.
something to take into consideration. It's just an apolitical, dumb protocol. It's
So tell me a little bit more about Sphinx, dude. Now that you're how many months in, give me a hot take.
let's see. Let me see. Hot take. I like it. More people need to use it. So yeah, I can tell somebody was listening to an episode of TFTC 3 hours ago on Sphinx. They were streaming me 10
Awesome.
sats, 10 sats a minute listen with 10% going to the devs of Sphinx Chat and Podcasting 2.0, I believe. I love it. I love, there's many aspects of it, right? You can stream sats, which is just incredible value for value. Being able to get monetized directly from my listeners is incredible. It's pretty meta that some people listening to me speak these words right now over the next 2 minutes will be streaming me sats on some apps. The community nature of it is a really great aspect too. Having the tribe on Sphinx and being able to interact with the freaks on a day-to-day basis. Conversations lively in there, which is good. And then listening to podcasts, like I listen to my favorite podcasts that are linked up to Podcasting 2.0 and have tribes on Sphinx Chat. I listen and try to contribute back to them myself. So I can see it like at scale, like just to be open and transparent with the freaks. So we joined Sphinx, I think in November, or we officially like created our tribe in November, maybe. I forget exactly what it was, but since then, a combination of sats being streamed and people boosting, we've made almost 5.1 million sats, which is right now it's like $3,000. Subtract all the sats that I've spent listening and boosting other podcasts. So let's say 5.5 million sats. We have about 800 freaks in the tribe, and I don't know if that many are coming in and interacting or listening to the podcast every episode that way. But considering the small scale of it, I mean, we've got hundreds of thousands of downloads a month. So if you figure only like less than 1%, less than a tenth of a percent of our monthly viewers are actually using it via this model, I think it's a good amount of sats to have accrued over the last 6 months. And if you think of if that gets to a greater scale and it becomes more commonplace for people to interact with podcasts and support the creators this way, it could be a material amount of money. If we get to like $1 million Bitcoin, this 5 million sats would be what, like $50,000. So somewhat of a salary within a 6 month period. Could be scalable.
Love it, dude.
Yeah.
Big respect for you and Matt, and also just having this conversation. Like a lot of people aren't too into even like approaching the subject of the NFT stuff, but yeah, you guys walk the walk. It's admirable.
Well, I mean, thank you, number one. But like, if I'm gonna broach this subject, I want to broach it with you as somebody who's been actually making legit art in the space, and you're an artist that I respect. I love your pieces. I don't have any originals yet, which bums me out. But I've got a few of your prints.
Get that free JPEG behind you.
I got the free JPEG behind me. My office will be littered with crypto graffiti art, prints, and hopefully original pieces at some point in my life. Yeah, and I got to move out of my father-in-law's bedroom first, and then I can actually decorate a studio and do it correct. But yeah, no, I mean, that's the other, like, again, that thread I posted yesterday morning. I was open, like, I don't see it yet, but there's obviously a market for it. You're an artist, you're in the space, like, you know the monetization paths of art
Yeah.
better than me. So instead of just being an asshole tweeting about something he may not know about, I figured let's have let's have a conversation about it. And again, if the market is going to develop, there obviously seems to be. So let's jump into that. Is the market just like a huge money laundering thing? Like a lot of the NFT stuff could be seen as like money laundering, and how would that work? Which is just not saying that it is. I think it's an interesting vehicle, the mechanics of it. So maybe that's something we could touch on right now.
Yeah, happy to not be an expert on that, but something that's like, the way that it's done in the traditional art world, which like when I jumped into this, I kind of had the option of going like more traditional or down this path, which was infinitely more interesting. And I was trying to get away from these shenanigans. I got like artists in the family and seeing some of the issues that they had to deal with the more traditional art world. So now like seeing some of the downsides of it creeping in is it's like, all right, well, it's here. But yeah, man, I think it's gonna happen. It's happened like for centuries, right? So it's kind of unavoidable. I don't know. I can't really speak too much on that. I think if really the focus is just trying to support and like throw out these crazy edge cases, then there's a lot of good stuff in there. Like, and not to like keep rehashing it with the digital artist stuff, but like it's this construct, like, because I don't know, you and like a lot of the listeners, anyone who's like enjoying the art online, like, are they tipping? There's really not like an easy format to do it. And this is just an easier way to do it. And so like what you hear from a lot of people with the pushback is, oh, well, they should just like be doing merch, but then they're doing physical work, and some of these artists just prefer to stay in the digital realm and not have to deal with like the issues with shipping, especially in times of COVID where stuff's been more difficult. And yeah, so there's just this new era, I think that's upon us, because the tools are getting better too with the digital art, and the quality of it is getting better, and there's just more people doing it. And so yeah, I don't know, I'm kind of circling back to what we were talking about earlier, but I think there's going to be a lot of this shenanigan wash trading type stuff, and higher valuations, and things that mimic the traditional art world, and it's going to be unavoidable. But yeah, if the focus is really to just try and support people that you think are doing good, then that option will be there too.
Yeah. How does this change the future of the art world or content monetization? Like, what does the landscape look like? Like, so let's focus on your DJ set. And so what you did is you had a Lightning URL, an LN URL QR code that anybody watching via YouTube or streaming to their TV could scan and tip right away. And so your set had a bunch of different artists from all over the world, and you had it set up where people would tip you, and it gets split, sent to the artist, the producer. You can make your split up as unique as you want to. And considering this model is coming to disrupt the traditional uh, royalties model, if you will, like what does that do? Like what kind of middlemen does that cut out, and what does it allow artists and producers to do moving forward? Does it really free them up in any regard?
Yeah, I think if it can be done like grown kind of like Sphinx, like from the ground up, where it's built around some of this tech, it'd have a lot more impact than like trying to convince like a YouTube to totally change their ad model, right? But it could mean uh, cutting out middle people, and if the platforms themselves get a cut, then it can mean getting away from the ads, right? So the producer is maybe there's a vocalist that's in on it. The DJ, who kind of an unsexy way of saying it, becomes like a referral, like marketer in a sense. They get in on it. Like initially, had thought about it from like a live venue, so like if like an audio fingerprinting. If you're in a like a concert or a club, and you Shazam, and then you get it, and then you can immediately on the spot tip the venue for hosting the whole damn thing, and then some of it goes to the DJ, some of it goes to whoever. So there's different formats that it can take, but I do think that it would probably mean someone who's in the space that's willing to have a go at doing a more ground up approach that's really tailored more to it. But that if you look at the alternatives and like some of what I was describing earlier with like how these royalties are paid out, and some of the roadblocks to getting either paid or having your music heard, and having to deal with the interstitials and like this random stuff that gets in the way of the art, it's a no-brainer. I do think it's one of these things that we're going to look back on. And so part of it was just wanting to hopefully inspire others. Like I just got off a call right before this with a known record label who's interested in it, and it would take a concerted effort with. And I don't like it when like you rely on like influencer type stuff, but it does help in certain situations. So if you had like a recognizable name label that was willing to partake, and you had some people on the inside like Bitcoiners that are willing to build it out because they can see the potential impact of it, and also it could be profitable. The royalty space is multi-billion-dollar industry. So yeah, I think it could be a pretty big like tectonic shift from the current way of doing things, but it would just be a lot of work. And so for some of my stuff, it just means like throwing it out there and giving like a glimpse of what might be possible, and then hoping that others will run with it, because I can't like do it myself. But been fortunate to like be around long enough to where like if I propose something, then I can get some collaborators to like build like a MVP type thing or proof of concept.
Right. It feels like the next progression. Yeah, we talk about order of operations a lot, but in the music industry, production has been completely disrupted with the internet age. You don't need to spend an obscene amount of money to rent out a studio anymore. A lot of people can just make their art in their rooms, in their homes, and have a pretty good end product. Distribution similarly, SoundCloud, other ways to distribute your content, even RSS feeds, is disrupting that model. I mean, Chance the Rapper um, and really paved the way in that, as well as some other artists who decided to go independent for production and distribution. And now the next stage, monetization, seems ripe to finish that stack out. Correct?
Yeah, it does, and it's hugely important, especially like the genre of music that I like, where like these underground electronic music artists aren't making a lot, and so like every little percentage point that can go back to them is like hugely important, because if it can help fund them to really just focus on the music, then the purity of their art and their music is not jeopardized. And it's something that has like really taken over, like underground house music started in like gay black clubs in Chicago, New York, and it was because these people weren't allowed to get into to the white clubs, and so they created their own thing where everyone was allowed, and and it was just pitch black, and just the focus was on the music. And then if you look at it, like what it's evolved to now, where like you're only going to get booked if you have this big social media following, and it's all about C and B scene, and the music is it like you're literally like watching the antics of the DJ rather than focusing on the music. It's kind of, there's a lot of parallels to what's happened with all coins versus Bitcoin. Like I've tweeted a couple of times where like Bitcoin is the underground because it has this focus, and it wants to do one thing, and it wants to do it well. And I think that's kind of what's happening, at least with the space of music that I follow, where there's all this sideshow stuff that is distractions. And so if we can fix the money for them too, then they can focus more on the quality rather than have that be eaten away at.
Are you not a big fan of Steve Aoki throwing cakes at people?
No, man, not just because I'm trying to avoid sugar. Like for
It's
uh,
yeah, it's so weird that people like openly get on shoulders to get a whole cake thrown in their face. It's a bit of a sideshow.
yeah, I mean, it's to each their own. I don't want to like just poop on what's fun for some people, but like it is like I saw these DJs that really produce like good music are like no longer getting booked because they don't have the social media following, and it's no longer about like the music. And for people, it's one of these where like if you already start out with money, there's a lot of like DJs who are like born into the money, and so then they can just buy the following, and it's like it sort of yeah, it takes away from the whole thing and like the roots of it. And it does sort of like speak to what you were talking about earlier about like good art being easily recognizable, and that's kind of heard also with like, at least with this electronic music space, there's stuff where it's like, okay, this is obviously commercial and just meant to be the background of like poolside at a party or something, that with people with bottle service versus people that really care about their craft. And I think if for the people that really do care about their craft, if they can have more time like focusing on the music, because they have to worry less about the money, because there's less middle people involved who can take away from it for a number of different reasons. Not just the money, but also the direction of it. That's another big thing. Like it's the whole trusted third parties or security holes. Like whenever you involve others with your art or your music, they may have some restrictions that they want to put on it. And yeah, so the more peer-to-peer we can get with this stuff, the better.
Yeah, it's bad time. I'm sorry, I was typing there because I had to look up his name. When David Solomon, the CEO of Goldman Sachs, is booking more DJ sets than actual artists. It's a bad state of the DJ world. It is all clout chasing.
You better be using that money gun too, or you just like showering people.
That was that's a weird sign of the times. Goldman Sachs CEO moonlights as a DJ on the weekends.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely bottle service there.
Well, it's like staying on these like DJ sets though, like not even DJ sets. Like I'm like you can go to Kingston Mines in Chicago. You wait in that line. You pay that $20 fee to get in to go see blues late at night. Like imagine if it was just like Lightning Network invoice, and automatically you paid the venue, and then you split the sats to the artist for the night too. Bang bang boom, payouts immediately, fairly, transparently. The
Yeah,
artist wanted to go audit the venue and make sure they were getting paid, they could easily do so.
yes, because collecting that check, you always hear the horror stories with comedians and musicians. They got to go back to the room and get the fucking payment, and usually it's less. And yeah, man,
That's what led to Uncle Ben Parker dying. Spider-Man went to go collect his check for wrestling. They didn't give him enough money. he let them get robbed, and the guy who robbed them ran out and shot his uncle.
Oh man, I
Bit-
didn't know. Sorry.
Bitcoin could have saved Uncle Ben.
Oh my gosh.
Uh, no, it's crazy how it's all going to get disrupted, or it is getting disrupted. I mean, I'm seeing it right now with podcasting. It's still very early days, though. I guess that's the next question. Is like not for you, but just like for the space in general. Is when does the public begin using these tools that allow people to monetize this way? Like I would love for all the freaks to listen to podcasting 2.0, listen to the podcast via podcasting 2.0 platforms and stream sats. Hopefully we can go next year to a completely ad-free model and do that. That's like one thing that's always in the back of my mind, is when we do that, like, are there going to be enough people that come with us um, to help us monetize? And the best way to do that is make it as easy as possible. So in this transitionary period, you have to like tell people who don't want to spend sats to like download Strike and do it that way. It's like how, or is it simply like, and if you build it, they will come type situation where we're just so early.
Right, right. When you saw the drop off with Rogan, just from from people just going over to, yeah, I hear you, man. It's why I think, like it or not, the whole like leaning on the influencer stuff does play a part there. Where like I think like with Mastodon, like if there's like exclusive content that's only happening on the one platform type of thing, that might help drive it. There's got to be the little hook, something they're not getting elsewhere.
That's what, like, I'm not going to say it bums me out, but it's like, especially these artists, all these music artists pushing NFTs, like Kings of Leon doing that. I'm like, why don't you just like do the stream sats model, or try to blow that up?
Right.
Like, it would be great because, especially when you think about royalties and being able to distribute that, seems a little bit more clunky. It would be more clunky selling NFTs as opposed to like streaming sats or paying a Lightning Network enabled paywall that immediately splits the payment to all the members of the band, the producer, manager, whatever it may be. A lot of efficiencies to be gained.
Yeah, yeah, because it seems like a lot of what's happening on the music side with the NFTs is like exclusive access type things that aren't really like, you don't need an NFT for. Um, but also still kind of early days, like that programmable art type thing I referenced. The their async art is the one that's really kind of driving that. They're doing it with music too, where like the different layers, the different stems can be ownable. So maybe like this sort of speaks to this new dynamic with collectors and artists, where like when you remove the middle people, you have like a closer relationship with them, right? And so like whether it's art or music, they want like involvement, they want access. And so if that means like you give them the option for this like one drum pattern versus another one, where that either one of them is going to be good, and they get to choose it, they may like eat that up, right? They get ownership over having the ability to choose via this NFT that the music is going to ultimately, the finished product is going to sound like this. That might appeal to some people, but it is like a lot involved versus just like a streaming SaaS type of model, right? So
Yeah.
it can get granular in terms of how it's approached, but it's some of the ways that it's currently being done. Like there isn't a need for an NFT for. It's like more straightforward. I think Kings of Leon may have been this too, or did they just sell like a track, or what was the?
I think they sold a whole album's worth of tracks. As I don't know if it was one NFT or like a 12 NFTs, one representing each track. But yeah, that's all it was somebody owns the latest Kings of Leon album.
Right. Yeah, this dynamic of wanting to, like, I have like collectors who I'm like friends with on Twitter, and this close relationship where it wouldn't have happened like 15 years ago, when you have the art dealer in between, and there's positives and negatives that come with that. But it's when you are closer and you're DMing with these people, the idea of ownership of stuff is easier for the ones that aren't just trying to like flip it and make a buck. It's like this more intimate thing where you know stuff about their kids, and it's like, okay, well, yeah, there's this thing that you're doing that represents some other work that you did and that you didn't get paid for. Maybe I'll support it. Yeah, it's a when you take out the middle people in all facets of the process, not just payments, it's making for uh, these different experiences, and I think that's also what's driving some of this is the idea of being a patron slash collector is easier if you're like closer to the art and artist.
It's maybe going too far, but in some sense, you become a collaborator.
Yeah,
Like, like
yeah,
you,
and when I say for better or for worse, it's like because the whole trusted third parties are security holes, right? Like I've had some like weird commission requests, where I'm like, uh, and then because you're that close, it's harder to you
say,
worry about jeopardizing the relationship, right?
well,
But it is, yeah, the idea of patron becoming a collaborator because they're in DMs like with ideas too, like very frequently, and it's almost like a DJ that gets requests. Some are great, others like, well, you don't really throw in Kings of Leon after this Steve Aoki makes.
right? Yeah, no, yeah, I mean, not that I'm an artist or anything. Yeah, like just recommendations for episodes, topics. It's like, all right,
Yeah,
I like curating. I like curating. It's yeah, it's a fascinating future. Would you say it's a blank canvas? I had to make a nice art pun here.
yeah, I like it.
It's is it an exciting time to be an artist?
Yeah, man. It's really like kind of mind blowing to see all this happen now, where just even just Bitcoin, just everywhere is like, oh my gosh, it's Ron Paul GIF. It's happening. And
So
then,
it's
yeah,
dang.
I feel blessed to just be able, like, I think what, like, for me, it's less about the money. It's more about just waking up and being able to do whatever I want, and being unbeholden. And I think like you and Matt embody that too. Like you write, you get up and like, what am I going to put in the bin? Very much the same. Like, and to it's just the best freaking thing in the world. Like I feel so fortunate to just like have a concept. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna run with this thing. I think it's important, or I think it's gonna be cool, and to just have that freedom, and to have it go towards a cause that I believe in is just like this magical freaking thing. It's so awesome. So like seeing you guys doing what you're doing and putting the truth out there, totally respect it. And I want to do the same. I want to like feel like my online persona is the same as offline, and like not have to like pull any punches there, and just work on what I want to work on and try to move this thing forward, because like to me, like Bitcoin is freedom and Bitcoin is truth. And so somehow like embodying the protocol in my work and in life, and having that like translate is huge. And so yeah, so when I see guys like you keeping it real and doing it in a similar fashion, it's just awesome. It's uninhibited, and I think what this is all about.
No, thank you. And I have to echo your sentiment. I feel extremely fortunate to be in this position and be able to do this as as a living. It's pretty insane to think about, especially considering there's a lot of people out there who are still looking for their passion and stuff like that. So I feel completely lucky, fortunate, and um, just to be here doing this. And I mean, the stuff that you're putting out is incredible, extremely thought provoking, and drives the message home. So like I think you're hitting the nail on the head in terms of what you're trying to accomplish with your art. I mean, again, pointing to the piece behind me for anybody listening at home, the United Nodes of Bitcoin uh, is indicative of Bitcoin. Really embodies what this is trying to get out for anybody who's watching on YouTube and hasn't seen the back. It's George Washington in looks like a Jedi, uh, like what do you, a robe or whatever, garb. Yeah, I'm happy to be on this weird front line of trying to bring Bitcoin to the masses with you. I appreciate the work you've done. I appreciate you for coming on and having this conversation with me. I know Bitcoiners hate NFTs. A lot of them do. Well, that's the thing. I think we shouldn't speak for all Bitcoiners. There's a very loud contingent of Bitcoiners that hate NFTs and don't understand digital art. I mean, I wouldn't say that I hate NFTs, but it's something that certainly I'm still trying to grasp my head around and really understand the nature of it and how it could catch on or accrue value. And I think this conversation definitely opened some synapse pathways for me in my brain to understand where you're coming from. Particularly having this conversation with an artist is certainly illuminating. So thank you for answering my dumb questions and for making the work that you do. Where can we find out more about you? What do you got coming up? Anything you're working on that you want to make the public aware of?
Yeah, cryptography on all the different socials. Two F's, one T. No one can pronounce it or spell it, and that was my fault. Um, Coming up, I'm gonna do like a doc. So if you're coming to Miami, or just in general, if you have a good origin story, everyone tells their like 60-second version at the beginning of the podcast, but oftentimes it's just like kind of how you were introduced to Bitcoin. I want to get the 3 to 5 minute version that dives a little bit deeper. Like, was there something that radicalized you? Really, what like primed you to be ready for Bitcoin when you first heard about it? And then if you want to like dovetail that into how you were introduced to it too. If you have an interesting story, reach out because I want to compile them all and just that's just it, like just these stories, and have there be like one place to go for people to hear them because I think they can be motivating. Just learning different people's perspectives on how they initially got into it and why they got into it. So yeah, so got that coming up. I'll be doing some recording at the conference in Miami, and a couple other art projects too. So yeah, some just random work. So excited for things, and thanks again for having me, Marty.
I feel like a complete asshole. Cryptography.
Oh, dude, it's potato. I don't give a fuck. It's I brought this upon myself. It was supposed to be this fun play on cryptography and graffiti, and it's just shooting myself in the foot.
I will be pronouncing it correctly from here on out. It's not potato. You had intention. Cryptography. All right. Thank
You're
you.
appreciate it, man.
Thank you. I will see you in Miami, hopefully.
Yep.
All right. That's all we got today, freaks. Peace and love.